So, hi everyone and welcome to my channel. I'm KiwiSimsKate and today I'm going to be building the bottom floor apartment to my speed build, which I uploaded a couple of weeks ago now, where I showed the exterior of the apartment and I furnished the interior for the top floor apartment. So I've separated this build for a single sim upstairs, and downstairs is a family build, which I am creating today. And this build I built it in Mt Komorebi, and it is actually modeled after a building that I used to live in Japan. I used to teach English in a small city called Izuka, and the top floor, which you can check out now on my YouTube channel, is the furnishing of an apartment that's inspired by the apartment I lived in. Downstairs, however, I've decided to create a family apartment. And obviously in Japan, you may know that a lot of the homes and a lot of the apartments are quite small, and they're used to living in small spaces, particularly in big cities where there is a huge population. And so to conserve space, a lot of the apartments are quite small. So this is just a family of 3 though, so there is a parent's bedroom and a child's bedroom, but you could adapt the child's bedroom to a teenager or a toddler or anything. So I've got the floor plan together here now, and I've realized that the bathroom is considerably small. It's very, very small. So I have play tested it all though, so it should all be functional. And I've also uploaded it to the gallery as a whole building, so you'll get the top floor and the bottom floor furnished, and you can obviously change it up as you wish. You could make it into one entire home if you like, if you wanted more Sims to live here, but I built it with the idea that I would sort of maybe play upstairs with my Sim self, or single Sim and just lock the downstairs, or maybe use the function where you can have roommates and potentially kind of rent out the top floor and then have a family living downstairs or something like that. So you could change it up however you wanted. I'm building the kitchen here, and I had quite a bit of trouble figuring out the layout because it is very small, and obviously I wanted all of the normal kind of mod cons. I wanted the downstairs apartment for the family to look like it had been renovated, because if you see this speed build and the screenshots, in fact, of the exterior of the building, it's quite old, it's quite run down, it's got cracks and everything in it, and that was what the real building is like. They've actually torn it down since I lived there. But I wanted the downstairs family apartment to look like they had put a little bit of extra work into it, spent a bit of time renovating, whereas the top floor was a teacher's apartment for a teacher who had sort of been placed there, and the Board of Education paid for them to live there as subsidized rent. So they were paying very minimal rent. The kitchen layout took me so long because of the placement near the entrance. So I wanted there to be enough space to have this sort of mini dining table area and all of the bench space as well. You'll see that I go back and forth changing the layout and moving the counters places, and I also had some difficulty with the platforms. I haven't really spent a lot of time using them, but I'd really like to learn more about how to use them, because I just think they're a really cool function. And obviously with Japanese builds, you almost always have in a Japanese home an entranceway that then steps up to the rest of the home, so that you can leave your shoes there and not get the rest of the house dirty. I also wanted to keep a few traditional elements to this apartment, the family apartment. I felt like it was probably a very traditional family who still wanted the comforts of modern appliances and that kind of thing. So even when they renovated, they still kept a lot of the original furnishings and a lot of the original features of the apartment. So for example, the walls, that wooden beam style walls that I've also put in the upstairs apartment, they kept those, but they updated other things like the appliances and the some of the lounge furniture. I've put kind of that modern Japanese style that's sort of almost IKEA influenced. And here I'm cluttering up the kitchen, which I've left most of, and I've also left a bit of space for you to clutter up places in the kitchen as well yourself if you want. So I pull out a few debug items just to make it look a little bit more lived in, like a busy family is here. They're coming and going all the time, and they're not super big on keeping it clean and slick. They're just quite a practical family. The father works a lot, and the mother also has a part-time job, and the child's obviously at school, at elementary school, so away most of the day, and then has after-school activities, and then is often home late at night. So I wanted to create something that reflected their busy lifestyles, somewhere where they could just come home at the end of the day, relax, and do their regular everyday sim activities and get ready for another busy day out. So I imagine that these sims spend a lot of time elsewhere, not inside their apartment, and I didn't want it to look too lived in, if you know what I mean. You can actually still see me playing around with the kitchen. I extended it a bit, so I extended out this orange tile, which I don't think I've ever used in that colour swatch. I use that swatch probably quite often in bathrooms and also the floor equivalent, but I don't think I've ever used the orange swatch of it anywhere. And I really liked it for this build. I thought the orange tones went really well with the wood tones in the rest of the wall, in the lounge, and all the rest of the house. So I thought it just looked perfect here. And then the living room I kept really, really simple. So there's some modern Japanese furniture and just a TV. They probably don't spend a ton of time at home, really, not so much relaxing. So the dad would be at work late at night, and the mother possibly has hobbies or something, or maybe she spends quite a bit of time out with her friends. So they don't really have a ton of kind of family clutter items in their living space. They gather for food, and often they're probably not eating together. So I also didn't want to clutter the space so much that it was unusable. So I only added a 2-person dining table there in the kitchen, and maybe they just eat as and when they're home. They don't necessarily all sit down as a family together. I would normally build an entire room for dining, but in this case I didn't need to. This is the entranceway. I really liked that onsen kind of cubby storage wardrobe, so I added that here and a few family decor items to make it look a little bit more lived in, and that obviously that sign that tells your Sims to take their shoes off. I really love that aspect of the gameplay that they added for Snowy Escape. I think it is just perfect. I love it when they really add those tiny details. Something I wish they had added though in this Snowy Escape pack is a Japanese traditional style bathtub. And I think I mentioned this in my last speed build as well when I was finishing upstairs, but I really feel the lack of the tub when I go to furnish a Japanese house, because I feel like you can get most of the rest of the house fairly traditional looking, but when it comes to the bathroom, there's just something about Japanese bathrooms that are so distinctive that you need that onsen for it to look like a Japanese bathroom. So I was kind of disappointed they didn't just give us they gave us a bathtub, but it's just a modern bathtub. It doesn't look particularly Japanese. So I was really hoping for a proper onsen style. So what I did actually with the bathtub in this apartment and also in the upstairs apartment, I placed a very low half wall beside it as well, so surrounding it, and it does still function, so your sim will still be able to use the bathtub, but it gives it more of a kind of a built-in look, like the tub's fully built into the room as opposed to a separate thing, which I think a lot of the Sims bathtubs do look like. They look like they're an individual item that, you know, is separated from the walls. This is the parents' room, and I kept it really, really simple. Again, they don't have a ton of clutter in this house. It's really very much a functional apartment, and I've added just pieces that they need, and I generally love cluttering up homes, but in this case I just wanted to it to make it simple and also possible for you to change up and clutter as you wish. In fact, I'm moving on to the kids' room now, and this is probably the most cluttered of all the rooms. So they've got their nightstand, and they've got their desk, and they've got a bunch of clutter on their desk, and then I also put a few things on the walls, like I think I add one of those corkboard type things, notice boards, and some other decorations, some sticker decals and things. So this is definitely the most cluttered room, and everything else I kept pretty simple. But of course, you know, the other rooms you can swap things out or add more clutter if you wish. I'm quite in the habit of building smallish rooms, and then after I finish cluttering them all up, I realize they don't function. So I'm trying to get out of that habit. I just love the look, because in real life we don't have these huge expansive rooms, right, in general. So and you can just walk around objects, but in the Sims your sim will just not be able to walk in certain places if you've got it too cluttered, or if you've got items or objects in certain places, which is obviously, I understand, you know, in terms of creating a game like this, it's just inevitable and hard to avoid that kind of thing. But it then makes it hard to create something that's quite realistic. Often the most usable or the most playable builds are the ones that are larger and have huge rooms, and so you can move around things really easily. And that's not generally how I would build naturally, so I have to try and train myself to create homes with bigger rooms. I just automatically keep creating smaller rooms because it feels more realistic to me. I've pretty much done all the interior now. I'm just finishing off a couple of little pieces around the outside of their door and around the outside of the final build of the whole apartment block. So I did build the apartment block in my earlier speed build that I uploaded, but now I'm just going through and I am placing some foliage around the place, and I pull out a couple of debug vans which look very Japanese. Like, cars in Japan are just so much smaller than in New Zealand, and especially smaller than, you know, your average car in the States, and very rare to see big SUVs and things in Japan. And even the vans, like this kind of car here that I'm using, this yellow and white one, even they are very small versions of this type of vehicle. So yeah, I love that these match perfectly with the world, and they're just, yeah, they remind me a lot of living in Japan and the kinds of vehicles you would find there. I also didn't want to add too much foliage and do too much decorating to the outside. I wanted to keep it fairly simple because it is an older block and probably, you know, not taken care of that much by the, you know, whoever owns it. It's yeah, it's probably close to being torn down itself, just like the real thing that I modeled it on. But I wanted to give it a little bit of a garden, and it just makes the outside look a little bit more enticing. I also added that little corkboard notice board to the bottom, so we had at the base of our building near the car park, there was a little notice board that there wasn't really that many updates, but every now and then you would get a little update for the area. Sometimes for the town that we lived in there would be an update, or just neighbours' notes to each other. We had quite a strict recycling routine, so the town had specific rules around recycling, so sometimes there would be notices to remind you about how to separate your recycling and that kind of thing. Now I'm sort of finishing off the build with the back of the apartment block, so putting a small courtyard in here, and again I just wanted to keep it really simple. I wanted people to be able to download this lot from the gallery and then add items as they wished, as opposed to having something that was overly decorated and then it being a bit more complicated to take it to pieces if you want. So this you could really add to it if you wanted to use it in gameplay. And then changing up a little bit of the outside, so we've got some different tiling. I totally changed my mind with what I had added at the start. I decided this kind of large brick looked a little bit more realistic in this area, and it kind of matches the small amount of brick that's in the grassy section beside it, and it makes it look like there's kind of a walkway around the house, which I liked. Soon I'll be moving towards the screenshots, so I've just screenshotted the interior of the downstairs apartment today, but as I said, if you like this build you can check out my speed build for the upstairs apartment, which is for a single sim. It's a 1-bedroom, but it has a spare bedroom as well. Check out that on my channel. Thank you so much for joining me. I really do appreciate it. And if you enjoyed it, please leave me a thumbs up down below and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye!